look who's all grown up? This time on Scrolling Down the Belt, don't call it a comeback, he's been here for years. It's just that nobody ever really cared. Do you remember Dragon Wang on the Sega SG-1000? No? Well, first of all, I can't really blame you. And second of all, watch the second episode of Scrolling Down the Belt if you want to hear more about it. But basically, it was an early Sega-developed beat-em-up that heavily borrowed from the game that started the entire side-scrolling beat-em-up genre, Irem's Kung Fu Master! Dragon Wang wasn't particularly inspired or a port of an arcade game. It just came out on the SG-1000. That's it. So color me surprised when I found out that the protagonist, Wang, is back again just a couple of years later on Sega's Master System hardware. Makai Retsuden translates roughly into Demon World Tales, and has the rather bland localized title of Kung Fu Kid. But to be fair, the content of the game doesn't measure up to its foreboding-sounding Japanese title. There's nothing much supernatural or demonic going on here. In fact, most of the enemies you fight are just regular martial arts dudes, even though some of them walk at Wang like they're pretending to be the ghouls from Castlevania? Maybe? There isn't much in the way of story either, but it's more than Wang got last time. The Japanese manual says something to the effect of, "This is a tale of something that happened a long time ago in the back regions of China. The evil Lord Madanda suddenly awakened from a 1,000-year sleep, and the fearful villagers entrusted the wizard Tylon to handle him. However, Tylon perished to Madanda's powerful magic. Wang, who is trained in the arts of both Kempo and magic by Tylon, sadly set out to avenge his master, vowing revenge. Now, Wang heads toward the Lion's Castle where Madanda dwells." The English manual puts a bit of a different spin on the story. You're about to confront Madanda, the natural evil one, in a battle to avenge the death of your kung fu master, Tylon. In order to reach Madanda's domain, the Lion's Castle, you'll have to defeat hordes of his loyal demonic servants. Boy, that sounds a lot cooler than it actually ends up being. Are you prepared for this challenge? Fortunately, you're blessed with the mysterious talisman that gives you supernatural strength and protection against even the most dangerous enemies. Do they mean jumping? Your talisman is in the guise of a magical amulet, so use it wisely. You'll have to survive 7 rounds in all to destroy Madanda and his #1 henchman, Kyongshi. So start your trek to the castle with both eyes open, the dangers are everywhere. Though the Western and Japanese versions of the game are identical, as usual, the box art, it couldn't be more different. But Kung Fu Kid is also much more visually attractive than Dragon Wang was. Yes, it had been a couple of years and home console hardware had evolved. But the background graphics are so much more bright and attractive now that Wang has escaped the castle of evil with its floors of bacon. This may be the most colorful title that we've seen so far in Scrolling Down the Belt. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Just like in Dragon Wang, you can't punch, only kick. And once again, your best form of movement is jumping. But it's not just any jump, but one of the most floaty jumps that there's ever been. The longer you hold down the jump button, the higher you go. You can change course in midair multiple times during one, and it can be turned into a jump kick at any point just by pressing the kick button. Honestly, the best way to make it through the game is just to jump over everything and run away. Jump kicking when you're going to land on or right next to an enemy. You can also sweep, but why would you do that when you could be jumping? ABJ, always be jumping. You can throw talismans at enemies too, but why would you even bother with that when you could be, what? Jumping! Though sending frogs flying across the screen in Stage 3 is pretty cool, I guess. Anyone remember this from My Hero? They don't make an appearance right away, but Dragon Wang's maze levels are also back. Though this time Wang has a new tool to make traversing them much easier. A wall jump. Is this maybe one of the earliest examples of wall jumping in an action game? They also didn't make the mazes quite as annoying by having bits where you fall through the floor with no way of knowing where, and the wall jump makes it very easy to go from one level to the other. All of this means that the stink of Kung Fu Master that was all over the original Dragon Wang is much less present here. You can play Kung Fu Kid that way if you want, But why would you when you could be jumping? Like most beat 'em ups, every boss is going to have tricks that make them easier. But really, most of them involve abusing your jump kick as a hit and run, or I guess jump and run tactic, on the bosses. There are exceptions where baiting out a certain attack and reacting to it works much better. Or when you can stun lock an enemy and just repeat the same move on them over and over until they're dead. For the most part, the bosses all have fairly predictable patterns. However, touching them deals damage to you, and that's easier to do than you think if you don't have complete control over your jumps. The more health you come into them with, the better off you'll be. And that's why things start getting brutal in level 5. You don't have a lot of room to jump, and tough enemies come at you fast. Unless you're really paying attention to their placement, it's very easy to land on one and take some damage, resulting in either multiple deaths or going into that level's boss with very little health. And even though he has an awesome mosaic tile in the background, those fireballs can be kind of hard to react to at first. But it's not over yet, because level 6 is a boss rush, and a couple of these guys are pretty hard to figure out. The first one will just melt your health away with that bat. And as far as I can tell, you have to jump in very deep on him so that you can kind of get inside of him and spam him with sweeps. The third boss can be stunned repeatedly after the first hit, as long as you keep chasing after him and kicking at the right intervals. And the best way I could find to beat the fifth boss was just to lock him down with well-timed jump kicks. The whole thing is also particularly rough because you only get part of your health refilled between each boss. Probably based on your score, time left, or a combination of both. And then the run up to Madanda is kind of a joke if you've made it this far, and you can beat him without a ton of trouble by just continuously jump kicking, trying to always be in back of him so he can't launch his fireballs at you. All in all, this is a far better and more fun game to play than Dragon Wang was, but it's still quite a challenge. Sega hadn't picked up on the idea of checkpoints yet, because if you die at a boss, you're going right back to the beginning of the level. And in level 5, that is actually hell. So there still just isn't a lot to recommend. It feels pretty good in the hands, but it doesn't have as memorable of an environment as games like Renegade by Technos Japan or Trojan by Capcom that we've covered in this series so far. They should have leaned way more into the Makai part of the Japanese name and made a weird supernatural brawler. Then maybe we'd have more to talk about. Next time on Scrolling Down the Belt, I'm seeing double here. 4 dragons!